The wind howls endlessly across the barren plains of Patagonia, a land where time seems to stand still. Towering mountains rise like ancient guardians, their snow-capped peaks piercing a sky of endless gray. Beneath them stretch valleys untouched by civilization, where whispers of a forgotten past echo through the cold air. For centuries, travelers and explorers have told stories of beings unlike any others, men so tall they seemed like giants, striding across the land with strength beyond imagination. These are not just campfire tales, the earliest European explorers recorded what they saw with astonishment and fear. Yet, modern science has brushed aside these claims as exaggerations or myths born from isolation. But what if those stories were rooted in truth? What if remnants of a lost race once walked these lands before vanishing into history's shadow? As we journey through Patagonia's hidden corners, we'll uncover accounts that defy explanation, artifacts that challenge logic, and mysteries that science still refuses to acknowledge. This is not just a story about ancient bones or forgotten myths, it's a descent into one of the strangest enigmas on Earth, the hidden giants of Patagonia. Long before Patagonia was mapped or claimed by any empire, its vast wilderness was already woven with stories, tales passed from one generation to the next about colossal beings who once roamed its desolate plains. When the first European explorers arrived, they expected emptiness, what they found instead were whispers of giants. In 1520, Ferdinand Magellan's crew recorded an encounter that would haunt history. They claimed to have seen a man of enormous stature on the shores of San Julian. Antonio Pigafetta, the expedition's chronicler, wrote that the figure was so tall that our heads barely reached his waist. The sailors even tried to capture one, offering gifts in an attempt to lure him closer. To them, it was as if myth had stepped into reality. As centuries passed, these stories multiplied. In the 1700s, British and Spanish expeditions echoed similar reports, tribes of towering people, footprints embedded deep in riverbanks, and skeletal remains suggesting a race of giants. Charles Darwin, during his voyage on the Beagle, noted how persistent these local legends were. He dismissed them as exaggerations, yet even his writings hinted at uncertainty. Could entire cultures have fabricated the same myth? Or were these explorers glimpsing something the modern world has conveniently forgotten? Indigenous groups like the Tehuelche told their own stories, long before Europeans ever arrived. Their oral histories spoke of beings called Patagons, massive figures who shaped mountains, battled monstrous creatures, and vanished into the mist when balance was broken. To the native tribes, these giants were both protectors and warnings, reminders of powers that existed before humans claimed dominion over the earth. Over time, the myth of the Patagonian giants became tangled between truth and fantasy. Artists in Europe painted them as monstrous figures towering over ships. Maps from the 16th and 17th centuries even labeled parts of Patagonia as Land of the Giants. Yet, despite skepticism, the consistency of these accounts remains striking. Different explorers, separated by oceans and decades, all spoke of the same impossible sight, figures far larger than any known human race. Were these early witnesses deceived by optical illusion, or were they documenting encounters that modern science has chosen to erase? Each account blurs the boundary between record and legend, leaving behind a mystery that refuses to die. The deeper one looks into these stories, the more it seems that Patagonia's wilderness still holds secrets too large to fit within the limits of accepted history. The first whispers of the giants came not just from explorers, but from the very earth itself. Across Patagonia's vast and untamed landscapes, ancient relics began to surface, strange, oversized bones and artifacts that defied explanation. In the late 1800s, an expedition in the southern part of the continent uncovered skeletal remains that challenged conventional understanding. These bones, larger than anything previously known in human history, were found scattered across an area near the Rio Grande, a river that cuts through the heart of Patagonia. The size of the femurs, skulls, and jawbone suggested that these beings were unlike any humans or animals known to modern science. Some of the bones were said to be twice the size of average human bones, leaving archaeologists stunned. Yet, these extraordinary finds didn't come with any clear answers, and as time passed, many of the bones mysteriously disappeared or were destroyed. In the early 20th century, further discoveries were made that would reignite interest in the myth of the giants. In 1920, a pair of explorers from Buenos Aires stumbled upon a collection of giant stone tools near the Andean foothills. These tools, shaped with remarkable precision, were far too large for the average human to have used, yet no other creature was known to have had such intelligence. The size and craftsmanship suggested a highly advanced, unknown culture that had once thrived in this remote region. The explorers documented their findings, including photographs of the tools alongside the remains of what appeared to be giant structures, faint remnants of walls and long-forgotten pathways. However, when these documents were brought to international archaeologists, they were met with skepticism. Despite the compelling evidence, many experts dismissed the possibility of a lost race of giants. Some theorized the tools were merely exaggerated artifacts, while others claimed they were the work of larger, but still human, cultures. Yet, the most bizarre discoveries came from Patagonia's extreme northern regions. In the mid-1900s, a group of Argentine researchers unearthed what seemed to be a massive set of footprints embedded in the solid rock. These prints, thought to be millions of years old, were unlike any human tracks ever found. They were gigantic, over 3 feet in length, leading some to suggest that they had been created by a race of giant humans or even unknown creatures. Further studies revealed strange anomalies in the rock layers, as if these footprints had been preserved in an inexplicable way. Scientists tried to explain them as a natural phenomenon, erosion, ancient volcanic activity, or even the result of animal tracks, but nothing could fully account for their size or shape. What's even stranger is that these footprints were found alongside human artifacts, tools, pottery, and even remnants of human settlements. How could such ancient evidence be found in the same layers as modern human artifacts, unless an advanced civilization once existed here? Despite these findings, mainstream science remained firm in its stance: giants were a myth. The remains, tools, and footprints were written off as anomalies, either misidentifications or fabricated stories. However, local researchers, who had long believed in the existence of the giants, continued to dig deeper, uncovering more mysterious finds that kept the fire of intrigue alive. The most recent developments have only added to the enigma. In the 1990s, researchers using advanced technology like ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR scans found strange structures buried beneath the Earth's surface, hidden within dense forests and rocky outcrops. These scans revealed what appeared to be underground cities, roads, and even structures too large to be built by any known human civilization. The designs were unlike anything seen before, with proportions far beyond the scale of normal human construction. Could these be the remnants of a forgotten race of giants, their civilizations wiped out by time, natural disasters, or unknown forces? As each new discovery emerges, the line between myth and reality becomes ever more blurred. The more we uncover, the more questions arise, leaving Patagonia's hidden giants a tantalizing mystery that refuses to be solved. The land itself seems to hold the answers, but its secrets are buried deep, waiting for the right combination of curiosity and technology to bring them to light. Despite the mounting evidence from explorers, archaeologists, and local reports, mainstream science has consistently rejected the idea that giants ever walked the land of Patagonia. The discoveries, no matter how compelling, are often dismissed as either hoaxes, misinterpretations, or the result of natural phenomena. Scholars argue that the oversized bones and strange artifacts could be explained away by a range of possible scenarios: the remains of prehistoric megafauna, misidentified fossils, or the exaggerated accounts of travelers who mistook the size of their surroundings or the people they encountered. In the case of the footprints, some suggest they might simply be the result of unusual erosion or fossilization of other creatures' tracks. One of the primary reasons why science struggles to accept the theory of giants is the lack of concrete evidence: a fossilized skeleton, a verified DNA sample, or irrefutable remains that can be linked to an ancient human species. Despite numerous attempts to uncover the full extent of these findings, no expedition has been able to present definitive, scientifically accepted proof of a giant civilization. The bones that have been discovered are often incomplete or scattered, making it impossible to conduct thorough genetic studies. Some researchers argue that what we're seeing is simply an isolated group of exceptionally tall individuals, not an entire race of giants, and that the accounts of explorers have been blown out of proportion or exaggerated through generations of retelling. Moreover, the bones that were once examined, like the femurs and skulls discovered in the early 20th century, were often removed from their context and destroyed or lost, making further research impossible. Some researchers suggest that these relics may have been discarded because they were simply too extraordinary to be taken seriously. With no physical evidence to conclusively prove the existence of giants, many in the scientific community have written off these findings as mere artifacts of folklore, blending fact with myth. Darwin himself, when he visited the region in the 1830s, reported seeing native groups who were tall but not beyond the range of normal human height. While he acknowledged the strange accounts from earlier explorers, he attributed them to the myths of indigenous people and the tendency of early explorers to exaggerate. He also pointed out that the harsh conditions of Patagonia could have contributed to the perceived size of the indigenous groups due to their adaptation to the environment. The scientific community continues to fall back on the theory of missing links to explain the origins of human evolution, dismissing any theories that don't conform to the established narrative. This view is rooted in the dominant understanding of human history that spans millions of years, with Homo sapiens emerging as the dominant species roughly 200,000 years ago. If a race of giants had existed in Patagonia, it would radically alter our understanding of human history, and many scholars are hesitant to embrace such a paradigm shift without irrefutable proof. The theory of giants is simply too extraordinary for most researchers to consider, given the evidence at hand. Yet, this skepticism fails to explain the persistence of the giant legend across centuries. If the reports are mere fabrications, why did so many independent explorers, spanning continents and cultures, write about them with such consistency? Why do the stories of giants persist in local folklore and in the records of sailors, naturalists, and adventurers, despite the glaring absence of concrete evidence? These questions continue to haunt the scientific community, making the debate between myth and reality all the more fascinating. The mystery of Patagonia's giant stands as a testament to the limits of our understanding. While scientists may dismiss these tales, the enigmatic finds scattered across the region suggest that some truths lie beyond the reach of conventional science. As technology advances, perhaps new tools will be able to dig deeper into Patagonia's ancient secrets, offering a clearer view of the giants that once, or perhaps still, roamed its mysterious terrain. Until then, the question remains, are these the product of myth, or is there something more, something science can't yet explain? Long before European ships touched the shores of South America, the native peoples of Patagonia already carried stories of beings far greater than humans. To them, these giants were not myths, but memories, living fragments of their ancestral past. The Tehuelche, Selknam, and Mapuche tribes spoke of towering figures known by many names, Patagons, Kenas, or the Hachai. These colossal beings were said to have walked the earth in ancient times, shaping the mountains, carving valleys, and battling the forces of nature. They were not gods, yet they were not entirely mortal either, something in between, beings of immense strength and mysterious purpose. According to Tehuelche oral traditions, the giants were the first inhabitants of the southern lands. Their bodies were so immense that they left deep imprints in the ground, footprints that, according to legend, could still be seen after centuries. These giants were believed to be protectors of the earth, maintaining balance between humans and nature. But over time, their power became too great. The stories tell of a great storm, a celestial punishment sent by the spirits, that wiped them from existence, leaving behind only their shadows in stone and soil. The people of Patagonia grew to fear certain valleys and mountains, believing the spirits of the giants still roamed there, watching silently from behind the wind. The Selknam people, who lived farther south in Tierra del Fuego, carried similar legends. They spoke of beings with immense strength who could uproot trees and move boulders with ease. Their mythology described these giants as both creators and destroyers, figures who helped shape the landscape but also brought chaos when angered. The elders warned that disturbing their resting places would bring misfortune, a belief that still lingers among some descendants today. Rituals were often performed before entering certain sacred lands, offerings made to appease the ancient ones whose bones might still lie buried beneath the surface. Modern anthropologists often interpret these tales as metaphors, symbolic expressions of natural forces, personified through storytelling. Yet, even these interpretations fail to explain how multiple tribes, separated by vast distances and lacking written contact, all shared the same descriptions of giant beings. Their oral histories align too closely to be mere coincidence: enormous footprints, large skeletal remains, and forbidden valleys said to hold the bones of the old ones. Some modern indigenous elders insist these were not myths at all, but historical truths erased by time and disbelief. They speak of ancestral warnings, that long before the arrival of the Europeans, their people lived alongside another race, one that vanished mysteriously, perhaps driven to extinction by the very elements they once ruled. Their spirits, they say, remain bound to the land, their presence still felt in the winds and the mountains that dominate Patagonia's lonely horizon. While science dismisses these tales as folklore, to the indigenous people of Patagonia, the giants are a part of their identity, their history, and their land. These stories are not meant to be proven, only remembered. For them, the giants' existence is not a question of evidence, but of respect, memory, and truth whispered through the endless winds of the southern world. As the 19th century unfolded, the legends of Patagonia's giants continued to lure explorers, adventurers, and scientists to the southernmost reaches of the world. Driven by curiosity, greed, or the promise of discovery, many set out to uncover the truth behind the rumors. What they found, at least according to their journals, was far stranger than anything they had imagined. These expeditions, some officially recorded and others lost to time, would add layers of mystery to a tale already thick with contradiction. One of the earliest and most famous accounts came from the 1520 expedition of Ferdinand Magellan. His chronicler, Antonio Pigafetta, described encounters with natives who stood taller than any man of Europe. When Magellan's crew tried to measure one, the giant laughed, unbothered by their awe. The sailors traded with these towering people, offering mirrors and bells in exchange for food. Pigafetta's record was later mocked by skeptics, yet his meticulous descriptions matched later accounts almost too perfectly to be coincidence. Centuries later, in 1766, Captain John Byron, grandfather of the poet Lord Byron, led an expedition through Patagonia. His crew, too, reported meeting men of extraordinary size. Byron wrote that the giants were peaceful and curious, their voices deep and booming, their footprints enormous in the sand. The British press sensationalized his report, publishing exaggerated illustrations of monstrous beings towering over frightened sailors. But Byron's own logbook, preserved in archives, is more measured, curious, respectful, and entirely sincere. He did not claim they were mythical creatures, only that they were far taller than any humans he had ever seen. By the 19th century, explorers from across Europe arrived in search of physical evidence. French naturalists, Spanish missionaries, and Argentine geologists each brought back strange reports. In 1832, during his voyage on the Beagle, Charles Darwin himself heard repeated accounts of giant tribes from both locals and older explorers. Though he never encountered them personally, Darwin noted in his journal that these stories were so consistent and so often repeated as to warrant deeper inquiry. Yet, like many scientists of his time, he remained skeptical, chalking it up to exaggeration or misinterpretation. In the early 1900s, a German expedition led by Carl von den Steinen reported finding enormous footprints and tools carved from stone. His team measured the prints, each nearly a meter long, and found them embedded in ancient rock. They also discovered what they described as primitive dwellings, large enough to house beings twice the size of an average human. Strangely, many of their notes and photographs vanished during shipment back to Europe, fueling conspiracy theories that someone wanted the evidence suppressed. Even in the modern age, sightings and strange discoveries continue. In the 1970s, Argentine farmers reported finding massive skeletons near Lake Buenos Aires, only for the remains to vanish after officials took them for study. More recently, in 2001, hikers discovered unusual footprints near the Chilean border, perfectly formed and abnormally large, deep enough to suggest immense weight. Local authorities dismissed them as animal tracks distorted by melting snow, but eyewitnesses swore they had seen something human. Each of these encounters, spanning centuries, nations, and cultures, shares uncanny similarities, immense size, remote settings, and a haunting sense that these giants were both real and deliberately hidden from history. Whether the result of myth, deception, or truth buried under time, the pattern is impossible to ignore. Every expedition that ventured into Patagonia returned with more questions than answers, as if the land itself was protecting its secrets. The deeper they searched, the more elusive the giants became, appearing like ghosts, only to vanish when science tried to pin them down. The mystery of Patagonia's hidden giants has inspired a multitude of theories, some grounded in anthropology and genetics, others stretching deep into the realms of mythology and forbidden history. At the heart of these debates lies one haunting question: if the giants were real, who, or what, were they? The first and most conservative theory proposed by scientists is that the reports of giants stemmed from exaggerated encounters with unusually tall native tribes, particularly the Tehuelche. Some anthropologists argue that the early explorers, already primed by European myths of monstrous races, were astonished by the Tehuelche's height and strength, often standing a head taller than the average European of that era. Over time, these stories grew in the telling, transformed by rumor into encounters with beings twice their size. However, this explanation fails to account for the more dramatic evidence, oversized bones, tools, and footprints, that defy any simple biological variation. Another theory suggests a case of misidentification. Skeptics argue that some of the giant bones found in Patagonia may have belonged to prehistoric megafauna, such as the Megatherium, an enormous ground sloth that once roamed South America. The skulls and femurs of these creatures, they claim, could easily be mistaken for those of humans if found fragmented or weathered by time. But this explanation, too, feels incomplete. Many accounts describe intact skeletons with distinctly human features, not the skeletal structures of animals. Moreover, reports of stone tools and human-like artifacts found alongside the remains make it difficult to dismiss them as simple paleontological confusion. Beyond science, more controversial theories propose that the giants of Patagonia might have been a remnant population of an ancient, advanced civilization, perhaps survivors of a forgotten era predating recorded history. Fringe historians and alternative researchers often link Patagonia's mysteries to the Nephilim of biblical lore or to ancient texts describing hybrid beings, offspring of divine or otherworldly entities and humans. These theories claim that the giants were real, powerful beings whose existence was deliberately erased by later civilizations or suppressed by modern institutions seeking to preserve the current narrative of human origins. Supporters point to the recurring presence of giant legends across cultures, from the Titans of Greece to the Anakim of Canaan and the giants of Norse mythology, as evidence of a shared memory too consistent to be coincidence. Another fascinating perspective arises from the field of genetic anomaly. Some scientists, less skeptical than others, have speculated that rare genetic conditions might have once produced isolated communities of extraordinarily tall humans. Over time, these traits could have faded from the gene pool, leaving only traces in oral traditions and ancient bones. However, for such genetic anomalies to persist across an entire tribe or population, there would need to be a stable lineage, something that mainstream anthropology has never been able to document in Patagonia. Perhaps the most controversial theory is that the evidence of giants has been intentionally hidden. Conspiracy researchers argue that institutions like museums and universities have suppressed findings that don't fit established timelines of human evolution. They point to stories of bones disappearing from archives and expeditions that ended abruptly after reporting their discoveries. While such claims lack solid proof, the pattern of lost evidence is enough to keep the suspicion alive. Could it be that our understanding of human history is incomplete by design? In the end, the theories reveal more about human nature than about the giants themselves. Our need to explain the unexplainable, whether through faith, science, or imagination, drives us to fill the gaps in history with meaning. Were the giants of Patagonia ancient humans, evolutionary offshoots, or something entirely different? The truth remains elusive, trapped between myth and evidence. Yet, every explanation, from scientific to supernatural, only deepens the fascination. Perhaps the real mystery is not whether the giants existed, but why the world seems so determined to forget them. In recent decades, advances in technology have allowed researchers to peer beneath Patagonia's surface in ways that early explorers could never have imagined. Using tools like ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR scanning, and DNA sequencing, modern scientists have sought to uncover the truth behind the persistent legends of the giants. While no definitive proof has yet emerged, what has been found continues to challenge conventional understanding, and raise unsettling new questions. In 1998, a research team from the National University of La Plata conducted one of the first large-scale archaeological scans of the Patagonian plains. Their radar readings revealed a network of subterranean structures buried deep beneath the soil, vast, symmetrical formations stretching for hundreds of meters. The shapes resembled ancient dwellings or tunnels, yet their proportions were far larger than any human-made structures known from that period. Some passages measured over 4 meters in height, too high for ordinary human use. When samples were analyzed, the surrounding soil dated back thousands of years earlier than any known settlement in the region. Despite this, the findings were quietly archived and never fully published. The official explanation cited geological anomalies, but many suspected something more was being concealed. In 2007, a private expedition equipped with LiDAR mapping drones explored a remote valley near the Chilean border. To their astonishment, they detected what appeared to be an enormous humanoid figure carved into the side of a cliff, eroded by time yet unmistakably deliberate. Local guides insisted it represented one of the ancient protectors, a figure revered in indigenous legend. When the team attempted to revisit the site the following year, landslides had completely buried the formation, erasing nearly all trace of it. The coincidence only deepened the air of mystery surrounding the find. Modern DNA analysis has also produced intriguing anomalies. In several museums across Argentina and Chile, preserved bones once thought to belong to extinct megafauna have yielded partial sequences of human-like DNA, though heavily degraded and fragmented. Some samples show genetic markers inconsistent with any known indigenous population. Researchers have attributed these discrepancies to contamination or sequencing errors, yet the patterns persist across multiple finds. If authentic, they could suggest the existence of a distinct, now extinct human species, one larger and genetically unique. Satellite imagery has also revealed strange circular depressions and geometric alignments across the Patagonian steppe, visible only from above. Some researchers believe these may be remnants of colossal foundations or ceremonial platforms, while others dismiss them as natural formations shaped by wind and erosion. The debate continues, but each discovery feeds the same haunting question: are these natural oddities, or the faint fingerprints of a forgotten civilization? Despite the potential of modern science, the search for the giants remains mired in uncertainty. Funding is scarce, skepticism runs deep, and much of Patagonia's terrain is too remote for thorough study. Yet the technology keeps improving, and with every new scan and every fresh anomaly, the boundary between myth and evidence blurs further. For now, science offers no answers, only deeper mysteries hidden beneath the cold Patagonian soil, waiting for the day someone finally uncovers the truth. The legend of Patagonia's giants has done more than stir scientific debate, it has shaped the identity, psychology, and cultural fabric of the entire region. For centuries, these stories have lingered like echoes in the wind, influencing art, folklore, and even the way people view their own connection to the land. To the people of Patagonia, the giants are not just figures from ancient myths, they are part of a living heritage, woven into the soul of the landscape itself. Local communities still tell tales of the Patagons around fires under the endless southern sky. Parents recount stories to their children of the great beings who walked the plains, warning them to respect nature and never wander too far from home. These myths are not meant to frighten but to remind, a way to keep alive the reverence for forces greater than humankind. Anthropologists studying these traditions have noted how the giant myth serves a deeper psychological function. It gives meaning to the vast emptiness of Patagonia. In a land so immense and untamed, imagining that powerful beings once ruled it brings a sense of continuity, a bridge between the human world and the primal forces that still dominate the landscape. Culturally, the idea of the giants has found expression in countless forms. Artists paint massive figures emerging from the mist, while poets describe the mountains themselves as sleeping giants turned to stone. In recent years, the legend has re-emerged through tourism and popular media. Travelers from across the world visit the region, drawn by the mystery of the Land of Giants. Local museums, folklore festivals, and guided tours now celebrate this ancient mythology, blending myth with history in ways that captivate both believers and skeptics alike. Psychologically, the persistence of the legend reveals something profound about human nature. The image of giants resonates deeply with universal archetypes, the desire to believe in something larger than ourselves, to imagine that our world was once inhabited by beings beyond comprehension. It reflects humanity's fascination with power, mystery, and the unknown. In an age ruled by data and rationality, the story of Patagonia's giants stands as a quiet rebellion, a reminder that not everything can be measured, categorized, or explained. Even as modern science continues to search for tangible proof, the true power of this legend lies in its endurance. The giants may have vanished from the earth, but they remain alive in the imagination, towering not in flesh and bone, but in the collective memory of those who still look upon Patagonia's endless horizon and wonder what once walked there. As the winds sweep across the desolate plains of Patagonia, the mystery of the giants remains suspended between history and myth, neither proven nor disproven, but eternally alive in the imagination of all who seek the unknown. Science offers explanations grounded in fossils, misinterpretations, and folklore evolution, yet none seem to fully erase the feeling that something extraordinary once stirred here. The accounts of explorers, the artifacts found in forgotten caves, and the whispers passed down through generations all point toward a deeper story, one that refuses to fade into the dust of time. In many ways, the giants of Patagonia symbolize the frontier between what we know and what we can only sense. They remind us that our understanding of the past is not a fixed map but a shifting landscape, constantly rewritten as new discoveries emerge. Every culture has its own legends of beings who were larger than life, both in stature and spirit. The Patagonian giants fit into this universal pattern, standing as sentinels of an age when myth and memory were indistinguishable. For modern researchers, the challenge is not merely to find bones or artifacts but to understand why these stories endure. Perhaps the answer lies not in the ground but in ourselves. We are drawn to mysteries that mirror our own longing, to connect with something vast, to believe that the world still holds secrets untouched by time. The giants, real or imagined, represent that yearning. They are reflections of the part of humanity that refuses to accept that all wonders have already been explained. So, when night falls over Patagonia and the cold air hums across its barren plains, it's easy to imagine the shadow of something immense moving beyond the reach of the campfire's glow. Maybe the giants are gone, or maybe they were never meant to be found. Some mysteries, after all, survive precisely because they live best in the space between belief and doubt, where imagination takes over and the story never truly ends.